Welcome to the very first episode of Focus Data Solutions podcast. I'm your host, Paul McClure. I'm also the Business Development Manager here at Focus Data Solutions. Today I'm thrilled to be speaking with our founders, Paige and Elizabeth Moon. Thank you both for joining me today to discuss the origins and the evolution of Focus Data Solutions. Let's start with Elizabeth. As our CEO, can you briefly describe your day-to-day functions within the company?
Sure. As the CEO, my job, really, Paige and I split these up. As my job, I oversee all things strategic, I oversee all things financial, I oversee all things human resources, I oversee sales and marketing and client account management.
Yes, I know that we work personally on a daily basis, and I'm sure that you and Paige also work on a daily basis as well.
We do, but that's really my side of the equation.
Yeah, Paige, how about yourself as a CIO?
Well, my responsibilities changed over the years, but basically my responsibilities are working with clients and creating technical solutions for them, designing systems, keeping up with technology out in the universe, and making certain that we can continue to secure and protect their data on a daily basis.
Okay, excellent. And you're also a client account manager for some of our partners as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Paige actually really client account manages our top 15 to 20 clients.
Got it.
So that's really his responsibility. And Amanda is our senior client account manager, manages a huge book of our business as well.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you both sharing your insight on that as your leadership roles here at Focus Data. I'm going to pivot now a bit. I wanted to provide some context around this podcast and why we decided to launch it. The goal of this podcast is to give our listeners an inside look at Focus Data Solutions, from its origins to the company we are today. We want to tell the story of our journey, share key lessons learned along the way, and showcase how we successfully deliver value to our clients. Throughout this series, we'll feature conversations with company leaders such as Paige and Elizabeth, employees, partners, and clients to provide various perspectives. Our mission is to educate and to inspire by providing authentic and transparent view into building a company focused on client relationships and technology solutions. We hope this episode provides interesting insights and enjoyable learning experiences for our audience. And with that frame in mind, let's dive a little bit deeper into the beginnings of Focus Data Solutions. What did you guys see, and when did you guys see an opportunity in the market and decide to launch the firm?
I think seeing an opportunity in the market is giving us a little too much credit.
Okay.
So what I will say is there was a point in time where Paige was working for another IT firm. It was back in 2000, 2001. And that firm, unfortunately, was a victim of the dot-com crash that occurred back then. And he had the opportunity to buy assets out of that company. Mm-hmm. And that enabled us to launch Focus Data Solutions in 2001.
Okay.
So,
Paige, is this her idea or was it yours, combination? Like, what went into the decision of?
That's a really interesting question, because I don't think it was either of our ideas. It was one of our, we were in a unique position because most companies build and then go out to find clients. We actually had a client approach us when the firm I was working for was closing. We had a client approach us and say, why don't you buy the software that you helped to develop, and why don't you start a business and we'll be your first client. So in effect, we had a client before the business opened.
There you go. That's always a smart way to do it. But were you always working in managed services, IT support, or what was your previous role with the previous company?
No, as a matter of fact, managed services hadn't even been invented at that particular point in time. I was working for a professional services engineering firm that helped organizations and government entities in this area with their IT. So I was either on site most of the time working as a systems administrator or a network engineer, or I was creating solutions for our systems administrators and network engineers out in the field.
Okay, and how did you get into the IT segment, sector?
Well, that was compliments of the U.S. government. I joined the Navy back in 1984, 85, and I was in the Navy for 6 years.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you for your service, and we really appreciate you being here. Elizabeth, do you have a background in technology? Or?
I absolutely do not.
So
No.
what's a little bit about your background and what your play was?
Sure. So when we started this company, I was working for trade associations here in DC. My background really is very liberal arts. My master's degree is in museum administration, which did involve some business development type of activities, but it certainly was not IT. And when we decided to launch the company, we really drew a line that we still honor this day, which is Paige is everything IT,
Right.
and I am everything business management, business development. So my background has always been more on the what you're going to call administrative sides of Focus Data Solutions.
Excellent. Awesome. And are you both from the DC area, or where do you originally come from?
I'm originally from Hampton, Virginia.
Okay. Excellent.
So-
And then what brought in Paige? How about yourself? Where are
I'm
you?
from Charlottesville, Virginia.
Okay. And what brought you up to the Northern Virginia, Alexandria area
I got a job,
for the trade association?
right, at the National Association of Home Builders.
Oh, excellent. And then Paige, what brought you up here? Was it?
She did.
She did. There you go. What are some of the complications that might have come with working with your spouse or your significant other during the time to create this company,
I think really the most challenging aspect of working with your spouse is doing your best to keep it in the office and not at home.
Mhm.
I think it's trying to honor that line that I mentioned before, his side and our side. We obviously cross over. I do some business development, but I do a different aspect of it than he does. I, at times, help with dispatch scheduling, IT, moving resources around, but I don't get into how you actually work on a computer or a network or design one. But the hardest part really is respecting those boundaries and trying to keep work at work and home at home.
Right. Paige, you have anything to add on to that?
That pretty much sums it up. It really is, and it took a number of years to actually figure out what the formula was. And before that, we would share work within the office and at home. And I think that at some point we decided that it was better for both the company and our relationship if we
Right.
don't bring one into the other.
Some of our long-term staff members will tell you that the greatest day of their lives was when Paige moved onto the third floor of this building and I stayed on the first floor.
Well, we'll
So-
definitely get to this building that we're in right now
Right.
and some of the progressions that we've moved
Right.
from, because I know that the starts were kind of humbling. Like you started in your garage, your basement?
Basement.
In the basement. And it wasn't necessarily IT managed services. You guys were doing an email platform campaign and got to work with some exciting names.
Yes, so the software that we had allowed us to send broadcast email to or for organizations such as the John McCain campaign, and let's see, some of the other ones I thought were very interesting, the Dixie Chicks, and
Willie Nelson, I think,
Willie Nelson. That's exactly
and maybe
right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I think I've heard the
Schwarzenegger.
Arnold Schwarzenegger name
Right.
thrown around a couple of times.
Yeah.
If you were to reach out to him right now, do you think you'd remember who you are?
Absolutely not. I'll answer that. I don't
Okay.
think so.
Paige seems to think
You
differently.
think so?
No.
No.
No. But in addition, the software at that point was sophisticated enough that we could use it to stitch together newsletters for scientific organizations. So we had a scientific organization that would source scientific articles from numerous sources. And they utilized our software platform to personalize their newsletter, their scientific newsletter, to the individual. So the individual says they're interested in this and that, and not this and that, and we can stitch together those newsletters.
Right.
We did it on the fly.
It really was, I think, by my understanding of it, the forefront of what we now know and think of as email marketing.
Right.
It was really in its infancy, and I think Paige at that time and the company he was with was really on the forefront of that. And did a lot of things that today would seem a little archaic, but it's come a long way, and it was really the beginning.
It's interesting then. Why didn't you stick with the email marketing? What was that transition point where you went more towards the managed services segment?
I think I like hardware better than software.
Okay.
I think that's essentially what it is. In my background, going back to the Navy days, and certainly before that, I was much more interested in how computers communicated with each other and how I could make computers do things that they didn't necessarily ordinarily do. So I was always looking at the boundaries and how we can expand those boundaries to get more functionality out of computers.
Right.
Now, some of that is software, certainly, and I went back to college after the military to get a computer science degree.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized was that whilst computer science and working on computers at that point were treated as one topic, they are actually separate areas of technology. And the one that I enjoy the most is the networking of computers,
right.
and from the standpoint of going firewall into your network, that kind
right.
of thing. So that's why we made the leap from developing a software platform to assisting clients with their computer systems.
And all of that's still relevant today.
Yes.
Like, I know that there's a big influence that you put onto the security of the networks, making sure that they have the correct backup disaster recovery, the correct firewall, correct hardware in place.
Yep.
And also we have a pretty robust security stack as well. So clearly had a vision for growth. Even in the early stages, how did you strategically build and expand on Focus Data Solutions over time? I know that you said that you had one client basically lined up from the onset. How did you utilize that, and how did you grow from your experiences with that one client?
We had, I'm going to say it wasn't really luck. We had some people help us along the way, and we will freely admit that. Starting out with, and I think it was 2004, 5?
Dates are fuzzy.
Dates are fuzzy. 2004, 5, or 6, somewhere in there. We were approached by our then accountant who said, hey, I have a client who wants to sell his book of business, and he was managing networks for law firms here in the city of Alexandria.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to purchase from him his book of business. And that was really one of the major milestones from moving from an email marketing or email firm
Right.
into moving into a firm that worked with and managed networks.
Okay.
I think, and Paige can talk to this much better than I can, we started out as a firm that did block time, which for small companies. And block time is where you would buy a certain amount of hours, or you would, we'd go in and it would take us 10 hours to fix your computer.
Right.
And you didn't really know what your bill was going to be. And that was really our experience with our clients. And then in around 2007, Paige moved us strategically into a managed services model.
Okay.
And I would say that was the turning point for the growth and success of Focus Data. We had already been successful. In 2004, the Chamber recognized us as one of the Small Business of the Year, the Alexandria Chamber. We were already in a good trajectory. But I think what I would say is that really that decision has propelled us forward ever since.
I think that was probably the only decision that I made without, Elizabeth telling me no.
I don't agree with that, but okay.
But it was a scary time as far as a small business and as far as making this blind leap into managed services. What we know today is managed services. And I will take you even back further. Before block time, it was break fix.
Yeah.
And so someone would call me on the phone, I'd hop in the car, run over to their place, and attempt to fix a computer that I've never seen before, don't know how it works,
Right.
what's installed on it, don't know how it's being used. And then we would build them for whatever the time it took me to figure out what the issue was. And there was some challenges there, not only for us, but also for the client, because the client is unaware of what the time constraint would be, or unaware
Right.
of the amount of time it was.
A lot of uncertainty that goes into
Right.
it, both on your side as well as the
Right.
client's side.
Right. So when we made this leap from that to block time to being a managed services firm, it was a scary leap. I mean, it was going from knowing that we're going to charge on a per hour basis for our services to it doesn't really matter how many hours it takes us to fix that issue. We're going to spend that time. We're going to do it for a fixed fee.
Right.
And that was a very, very scary thing for us to do.
And that's still the model that we service
Yes.
today, correct?
Yes.
How many clients did we have when you made that transition? Were you servicing just still the same one person, or have you built up the book of business a little bit more?
Probably with the addition of the purchasing the book of business, we probably had 20.
Right.
Right. when we
Of
purchased-
those, maybe 4 or 5 were legitimate managed
Managed services
services
clients, right.
potential clients.
Right.
Right.
How was the transition from, if you're working block time with one provider or with one partner, how was the transition when you went to the managed services? Did they take kindly to it? Were there some objections? Was there any pushback?
There were, well, I mean, you could say that for the clients where we developed those relationships, certainly today we have clients who started with us back in 2007.
Right.
And we came to an agreement that in order to provide a better level of service for them and to protect both their interests and our interests, we would move to this new model. And it came with benefits, certainly to them. It came with the benefit of knowing how much it's going to cost every month so that they can plan on it. And then also rolling out all the features that we help to design for managed services, such as the routine meetings with their senior level executives to help propel them in technology.
Right. And you said you had about 20 or so clients at that time. Were they all in the legal sector, or were they spread across the board? What's the verticals that you were working with, and how have you seen that progress over the years?
Well, I was going to say we actually had 3 different areas. So again, going back to the 2 of us,
Right.
we were in 3 different sectors of buckets of business. So we were still sending email, broadcast email.
Okay.
Our largest contract at that point was with an organization that was contracted with the city of Alexandria to run their networks. So I ran their networks as a subcontractor to a contractor that had the,
Yeah. Well.
It was a little humpy.
And in addition to that, we were in this break fix to block time to managed services
With law
model
firms.
Right.
with law firms. So we did have an interesting.
Right. It was primarily law firms to start.
Right.
When we were
Right.
making that transition, we did begin to work a lot with trade associations, nonprofits,
Okay.
organizations like that.
Kind of going
very
into
soon
your
after.
segment that you're familiar with.
Right, and we did rely on that a bit because I understood trade associations and how they worked, and I had an inside look at how IT departments, in organizations worked. So that helped us a lot get at least a foothold or some traction in that
Right.
market.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
And then it also, just with the relationships that you built over time, obviously
Right.
word of mouth started to spread, and the services that you
Right,
provide.
absolutely.
I would say that the Alexandria Chamber was incredibly instrumental in that, allowing us not only to get to know the other businesses in this area, but to gain those relationships, to develop those relationships. And Elizabeth participated as the chairman of the board for them during, I can't remember what the year was, but
2008.
yes, 2008.
And
So
we both did Leadership Alexandria, of which you are now, and we are very
Correct,
happy
yes.
to say, a graduate
of the
Leadership
2023 class,
Alexandria.
correct.
Yes, so it's come full circle, as they say. But yeah, so Paige is right. The chamber was instrumental, and as a matter of fact, very short story. The very day Paige registered the company, the very day you filed the paperwork, the city of Alexandria, we went to a new member reception at the Chart House in the city of Alexandria with the Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
And
So-
with our first
And
client.
with our first client. Yeah, our first
We walked
client
us
took us
around
there.
and introduced
Right,
it to
yeah,
everybody.
absolutely.
Amazing. How did you know, or when did you know it was time to start the growth and that you two could no longer handle all the responsibilities? How did you know to bring on
Very
the next
quickly.
employee? What was
Very
that
quickly.
process like?
Again, scary, because now you're responsible for someone's livelihood.
Right.
So that's always scary. We started out with one gentleman who helped us. We kind of learned along the way. Our very first employee, as a matter of fact, was our neighbor across the street who really did more bookkeeping than he did IT.
Right.
Then we slowly really did build from that, and two of the people we hired are still here.
Wow.
Griff Jones,
Right.
who many people who know us know Griff, and John Patton.
And Griff will be joining us on some future
Yes.
episodes, so keep out for that.
But
Yeah.
that was, I mean, we slowly recognized, and I think anyone who's in business, or hopefully they do realize, that the goal is always to get the founders moving out of day to day as much as possible.
Right.
It's not always possible, and we will freely admit we go back and forth from not being in day to day to being in day to day on some occasions. But yeah, so adding to that staff was important.
Right.
It allowed us to serve more people, and we did build fairly slowly. I think we were 5 or 6 people probably until 2009, 2010, and then we slowly, when we moved again, is when we moved offices again. We started building up.
Right. What other changes have you noticed, like from the 2010 to, I guess, now? Obviously, it's a pretty long time, but changes within the industry, changes within practices, changes within people that we're servicing or the community of Alexandria.
Why don't you start with managed services? It's evolved so much.
Yes. So managed services started out very much like you would see with a copier company. They're gonna lease you the equipment, and then they're gonna give you a service plan for it. And as long as you don't go outside the service plan, your fee every month will be the same. Well, managed services was very much similar to that, or at least the concept was. Well, in the past 10 years, I'd say that has changed dramatically, in that security has become much more front and center. So not only are we taking care of the network and making sure that the internet connection is up and running, and fixing the word issues that you may have with the applications. It is much more about what we can do to protect not only the data, but the reputation of the organization, the staff of the organization, all of that. The security has become very, very important to managed services.
Right.
And going back to my background in certainly in the military, and certainly in where my interests lie in developing and designing networks, the security has always been of importance to me. And so it was an easy leap for us to make it from just being a managed services forward organization to a managed security organization.
Right.
And we'll probably grow in that area a great deal over the next years or so.
Awesome. And I know that we are a lot more than just an IT company. We're also kind of in the relationship business.
Right.
Elizabeth, would you be able to touch upon some of the relationships that we've created with our partners throughout down the road, and then how they've really helped us in the path?
I think number one for me is that we are incredibly relationship based, and the client and how we work with those clients across the board is of the utmost importance to us. We have several clients who, specifically in our trade association practice, who have moved from trade association to trade association and taken us with them at every step.
Right.
And that's very telling to me that our team is doing what we want them to do, which is provide service that is so amazing that they're taking us with them.
Right.
And that's a huge aspect of it. But every part of our process of our managed services, from pre-sale to sale, which you do, to our onboarding with our client services team that Amanda leads, to our network assessments, to our ongoing strategy, which we're continuously evolving. We are in really step with our client each part of the way. We're checking in with them with quarterly partner reviews each part of the way, and those lines of communication are constantly open. Our project plans have specific tickets with client communication points.
Right.
It is really our hallmark that we are, in fact, always talking to you about where we're going. And I think Paige has done a great job of leading the charge with that, in terms of building these relationships with people who come back to us time and time again because of that process we have in place.
Right. How do you feel What's the steps to getting the internal buy-in from all of the staff that we have on Focus Data Solutions to, showcase that mission that it is based off of the relationships that we built as well as our client services?
I'll kick it off and then jump in.
Okay.
Fair. I think it starts with our orientation. Actually, I would argue it starts with how we hire. I would think it starts with how we interview. We just hired 3 new team members recently.
Yep.
That process included our Chief Operations Officer, Dean. It included Jasmine Bazemore, who is our Senior IT Solutions Manager, and Fred Reed, who's our IT Solutions Supervisor, talking to the people who are applying, seeing how they would be a great fit for our team. So it starts there with the screening and how we get through it and how we look at it.
Right.
But then it builds on the orientation. I've been told by our staff that we have one of the most thorough onboard/orientations
No, I concur with that. I remember my orientation.
of any IT firm that they've ever worked with. We start with a 1-day onboard, but a 2.5, 3-week orientation, really intensive for our IT team, that starts everything from the products we sell to who our clients are, to what we expect from a client services perspective,
Right.
to shadowing their coworkers, to
Yeah.
learning how we deliver Focused Data Solutions service, what it ought to look like, how to complete a ticket.
Yes.
I mean, it's that detailed. So in terms of getting buy-in, for us, it starts on day one.
And it was impressive for me when I got onboarded that there's time set aside to meet with everybody within the company.
Yes.
So you got to understand everybody's responsibilities and meet everybody, which I think is abnormal for the hiring process. So I think that kind of institutes, especially since you said we've had several members of our team here for over a decade at this point.
I think Griff's at 15 plus.
15 plus, John's at 12 plus,
12,
Amanda's
something like
at
that,
10
plus. Yes.
so
Absolutely.
you guys are at 20 plus, so.
22, as they keep telling me.
Yeah, and our birthday anniversary is coming up,
It is July
correct?
23rd, as a matter of fact.
So that's coming up very
Yes.
rapidly. Any plans for the anniversary for the 23rd?
Actually, we'll be in Chicago.
Yeah.
We'll be in
We will
Chicago.
be in Chicago.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Any other advice that you have for when it comes to starting, a journey for a new venture, or how to properly manage a company? Like,
Oh, wow.
Well, I don't know if I can say properly manage it,
Well, not
but
necessarily,
I
but-
can give you advice on where to start, and that would be with your local small business. What is it?
The Development Center, the Small Business
Development Center, yeah. They are fantastic at guiding you, and they actually were instrumental in giving us the details on how to run a business, which Elizabeth was part of from the beginning and led that design. I'm a engineer, so keep me out of the books, but they were also a client of ours for a number of years. And so developing those relationships, again, back to the chamber.
yep.
Well, and I would say, to asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. No business runs alone in an island. There are people all over the city who have helped us in one way, shape, or form or another. My other piece of advice is pay yourself day one. So many business owners don't. And I think if you want to create a long-standing business, understand that you are part of that business,
Right.
and the work that you do is part of that business. And one day someone will have to replace you.
Mhm.
And knowing what that looks like, what the impact of the business will be, and how that goes is really, really important. And I think that step gets lost a great deal in this whole, I've got to move it, I've got to grow it, I've got to get it to go. There are times you make decisions about how you do that. But
Right.
I think knowing you are an integral part of that business. And then lastly, hire well.
Mhm.
Sincerely, I love this team. I love who we have on it right now. And I think that the people who work here, I hope we're providing a great environment for them. And first and foremost, providing that kind of really great working environment for our staff, and trying to give them somewhere where they can learn and grow and be productive is really essential.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that insight. I think that's really helpful and insightful. I know that my motto that I give in my marketing is your partner for tomorrow's IT. What are some of the things that we're looking forward to in the future, or things that we should start to plan for as a managed service provider and as a company?
That's a really interesting question. I think that Well, certainly security will continue to be first and foremost, at least for me. And the opportunity to grow our business into the public sector, perhaps, the opportunity to expand our support to higher learning organizations, institutions. We've been very, very blessed with maximizing our penetration within the higher learning space here in Alexandria.
Right.
And now we're expanding up into New York City as well. So I think there's an opportunity there for us to expand our services. Beyond that, there's plenty. There's developing or expanding our cloud-based support services and to taking people away from the physical office. Now, you'll know that a lot of law firms, especially small ones, a lot of law firms are very physical server based. They have a server in the back closet and they their workstations are there. Well, that model is going away.
Right.
And being able to help them make that leap to not only providing for their data in the cloud, but also protecting the data that is in the cloud. And that's exciting to us.
I also think you're going to see, and you led a really great, what I keep calling rectangular table, because our table is rectangular, conversation on artificial intelligence and
Right.
how it affects small business and how small business can work with artificial intelligence or machine learning moving forward. It's in its infancy for small business. I think enterprise is certainly much more down the road
Right.
than small business, but positioning us to be a resource for that and how we can help our clients adapt to it, use it securely and safely, which I think will be key.
And I think that's a very good point as well, due to the fact that a lot of our partners' average size is about 20 or so. We
Right.
do service a bunch of small and medium-sized businesses. So Paige, when you mention still having physical servers, I'm sure that there's some people that are out there that are thinking, wow, that still exists, or I thought everybody was in the cloud now, but they're not the only ones, obviously, that still have servers. It's still prevalent in today's, and how things function, but potentially moving them away from that and looking into the ways that we can incorporate AI
Right.
into focusing more so on the smaller companies that might feel left behind, or they might be reading articles that are out there, blog posts, AI, ChatGPT is such a buzzword that you see it everywhere that you go. People start to kind of freak out about it, or
Right.
they start to be like, oh, why am I doing this?
Yeah,
Or
well,
why isn't my company
I
having to
think
incorporate?
Paige is better to speak to this than I am, but I think our word is proceed cautiously.
Right.
But that it is out there, certainly,
Yes.
and we know law firms are using it, and we know
Yeah.
lots of people are using ChatGPT, as you brought up, and just proceed cautiously, and we're
Yeah.
here to help move them along in that trajectory as when they are ready.
And I'm sure that we'll have several more episodes to kind of touch upon that
Absolutely.
topic, and as well as some additional projects that we have in the foreground, as well as some of the projects that we've have worked on previously and continue to working on. But this has been an incredible look at the journey of Focus Data Solutions, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you again, Paige and Elizabeth, for joining me. Thanks to the listeners that are out there, the new listeners. Please make sure that you tune in and follow us for episodes moving forward to dive into Focus Data Solutions and some of the projects that we have underway. Any last closing statements that you have, or anything that you'd like to touch
just
upon?
thank you to you for helping us organize this and
Yep.
for being an amazing facilitator. You did a great job.
Appreciate
And
that.
I'm
Thank you.
excited to see you and hopefully get our clients to sign on and listen and be active participants as we move forward with this.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good behind the scenes. A lot of what we do, obviously, is when it comes to the IT solutions, you call in, you can get, you work with our help desk team and we provide you with a solution, but what actually goes into some of the decisions, what goes into some of the projects,
Right.
the insight that goes into it. Paige, anything that you'd like to kind of...
No, this was fun. Let's do it again.
Well, I'm sure that you and I think, will be on a couple more episodes for
Okay.
sure. And thank you also to Fred, who is behind the camera working on everything. He might pop in for an episode or two.
Hi,
And-
Fred.
And also our summer intern, I want to give a shout out to you, Kat Avery, who was also instrumental in putting this together and helping me get all this set up.
Right.
She'll also be working behind the scenes and be on the lookout for some of her social media posts and clips that she's posting throughout the week. So with that, I think that we are going to end our first episode, and thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you.
Awesome.